My question's for Richard Dawkins. You're on the record as saying you can't prove that God doesn't exist, and you say you're agnostic rather than atheistic. Why do you appear as the champion of atheism around the world? Why do you accept offers to appear as the champion of atheism? And why are you so evangelical in the prosecution of your cause? Isn't that a touch hypocritical and unscientific?
Yes, Richard Dawkins, I'm a bit confused about this because you just referred to yourself moments ago as being an atheist, and yet with the Archbishop of Canterbury you referred to yourself as an agnostic.
In the God delusion, I made a 7-point scale. 1 is I'm totally confident there is a God. 7 is I'm totally confident there is not a God. 6 is, to all intents and purposes, I'm an atheist. I live my life as though there is no God. But any scientist of any sense will not say that they positively can disprove the existence of anything. I cannot disprove the existence of the Easter Bunny. And so I'm agnostic about the Easter Bunny. It's in the same respect that I'm agnostic about God. So,
what proof, by the way, would change your mind?
That's a very difficult and interesting question because, I mean, I used to think that if somehow, you know, great big, giant, 900-foot-high Jesus with a voice like Paul Robeson suddenly strode in and said, "I exist, here I am." But even that, I actually sometimes wonder whether that would...
I think you're hallucinating.
Exactly. I agree. I agree.
Can I just put the question to you? Could you ever provide Richard Dawkins with the sort of proof he requires for belief, scientific proof of the existence of God?
No, because I think he only accepts proof that is rooted in sense experience. In other words, he excludes the world of metaphysics, say the principle of contradiction, and he excludes the possibility of arguments that don't go against reason, but go beyond it. But could I make one little suggestion as to why Richard calls himself an atheist? Because in one of his blogs in 2002, he was discussing whether he's an agnostic or a non-theist. He said he prefers to use the term atheist because it's more explosive, it's more dynamic. You can shake people up. Whereas if you're just going around saying that you're an agnostic or a non-theist, it's not. These are his own words.
Well, let's let Richard Dawkins.
I don't remember saying that. It wouldn't totally surprise me. It's in
2002.
It's an ongoing issue. What's the best way? There is a problem with the word atheist, especially in America. I don't know whether it's true in Australia. There's a lovely woman. I'm blocking on her name because I'm jet-lagged. She's Irish-American woman. Anybody help me?
There are quite a few Irish-American women. Sorry about that.
Sorry? No. Anyway, I do apologise personally to her for forgetting her name. She's an actress and she's got she did a film on how she escaped from the Roman Catholic Church, and it's a very moving film, and at the end her mother discovered that she was an atheist, and her mother phoned her up and said, "Well, I don't mind you not believing in God, but an atheist?" Her name's Julia Sweeney. It's suddenly come back to me. I strongly recommend that. Now, the point is that the word atheist, unlike just simply not believing in God, has bad connotations. And so, to some extent, people have wished to depart from that and change the name to non-theist or secularist or non-believer. And I waver back and forth as to what's the best name to use. I sometimes call myself an atheist, sometimes a non-theist, and sometimes just a non-believer.
George Pell, can I just come back to you on this question of the existence of God? Why would God randomly decide to provide proof of his existence to a small group of Jews 2,000 years ago and not subsequently provide any proof after that?
Well, I don't think there's ever been any scientific proof. I don't believe God does anything randomly, although he might set up a system which works apparently through, through chance, through random. But if you want to get something done, you've got to ask somebody. It's no good, say, my asking everyone in the congregation, "Will you do something?" Normally you go to a busy person because you know they'll do it. And so for some extraordinary reason, God chose the Jews. They weren't intellectually the equal of either the Egyptians or the... Intellectually, morally...
How can you know intellectually?
Because you see the fruits of their civilization. Egypt was the great power for thousands of years before Christianity. Persia was a great power. Chaldea. The poor, the little Jewish people, they were originally shepherds. They were stuck, they're still stuck between these great powers.
That's not a reflection of your intellectual capacity, is it, whether or not you're a shepherd?
Well... no, it's not, but it's a recognition, it is a reflection of your intellectual development. But like many, many people are very, very clever and not highly intellectual. But my point is...
So can I just interrupt? Are you including Jesus in that, who obviously was Jewish and was of that community?
Exactly.
So intellectually not up to it?
Oh. Well, that's a nice try, Tony. The people, in terms of sophistication, the Psalms are remarkable. In terms of their buildings and that sort of thing, they don't compare with the great powers. But Jesus came not as a philosopher to the elite. He came to the poor and the battlers. And for some reason, he chose a very difficult, but actually they are now an intellectually elite, because over the centuries they've been pushed out of every other form of work. Jesus, I think, is the greatest, the Son of God, but leaving that aside, the greatest man that ever lived. So I've got a great admiration for the Jews, but we don't need to exaggerate their contribution in their early days.
All right, you're watching Q&A. Remember, you can send your web or video questions to our website. The address is on the screen to find out how to do that. Our next question is a video. It comes from Andrew Watson in Blackburn, Victoria.
Question for Richard Dawkins. The Big Bangers believe that once there was nothing, then suddenly, poof, the universe was created from a Big Bang. If I have nothing in the palm of my hand, close my fingers, speak the word bang, then open my fingers again, still I find there is nothing there. I ask you to explain to us in layman's terms how it is that something as enormous as the universes came from nothing.
Richard Dawkins.
Well, obviously you're not a physicist, and nor am I, and I am delighted to say that during my time in Australia I shall be having a number of conversations, public conversations, with my colleague Lawrence Krauss, including one in the Sydney Opera House later, I think it's next week. And he's written a book on exactly that topic of how you can get something from nothing, and I shall be questioning him about that. Of course it's counterintuitive that you can get something from nothing. Of course common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. That's why it's interesting. It's got to be interesting in order to give rise to the universe at all. Something pretty mysterious had to give rise to the origin of the universe. Now, if you want to replace a physical explanation by an intelligent God, that's an even worse explanation. It's an even more difficult explanation. What scientists are trying to do is to explain how you can get not just something, but the immense complexity of the world, of the universe, and of life. And science is making a pretty good fist of doing that. Life is now completely solved, barring the details. That was Darwin's contribution and Darwin's successors. Physicists are still working on the origin of the cosmos. Among them is Lawrence Krauss, whom I shall be talking to next week.